Yeah, it's interesting to me. For the last 15 years, you kind of touched on my background, but for the last 15 years, I've focused on helping organizations improve the quality of their leadership. I've helped executives have teams that are more effective. And one of the things that I love about this work is it's always different. It seems like every call is slightly different. There's a range of different things that we cover. There's great diversity. But one of the things that I've noticed in the last 2 years is that it's all changed. Every single conversation that I have with a leader now is in some way related to the pandemic or return to the office. The problem, though, is that while the topic is universal, managers remain stymied. So when I reflected on this experience, it's happened over and again. The question is, well, what are the key drivers? So what's leading to what we know of as the Great Resignation? What's causing this issue? And I think one way to understand it, one driver, is understanding the impact of the trauma that we've all been through.
Yeah, I agree with that. I want to go back to something you said, though, before I pick up the word trauma and talk about why the word trauma and what we mean by trauma and how we say that and all of that. You said every conversation you're having with leaders, and I know a bit about your work and the senior teams you work with and the teams that you coach, as well as the individuals. You said every conversation is in one way or another about the pandemic. I presume you don't mean how are you surviving the pandemic? What's happened? Have you gotten COVID? The chit chat that is casual. You mean how the pandemic is actually impacting the team's performance. So say a little bit more about that.
Sure. I mean, of course, everybody talks about how this is impacting them personally, and that's important. But you're right. The pandemic and the fallout from it affects every organization, large and small, no matter what industry people are in. And so what I'm noticing is that there's a question about how do I best help my people? How do I return to work? What does that look like? And which is an interesting statement in and of itself, returning to work. It's like we haven't been working for the last 2 years. The employees would tell you a very different story.
Yeah.
So there's a range of things, but almost in every case, there's this question of how do we do something none of us have ever done before? And that's the piece that I think is common to every executive that I work with.
You know, and people who listen to me know that I also believe one of the things that is going wrong is the stress levels were high before, but I think they're off the charts at the moment. I think our bandwidth left to deal with it is just shot. And you can no longer say to people, well, that's your private life, you sort it out. It's showing up in the day-to-day interactions, performance, and conversations we have. And I think that's a result of the pandemic as well, from my point of view. So I'd agree with you. Every conversation is ultimately the impact of the pandemic in some way or another.